Okay, so get this. Today's deep dive, it's taking us pretty far out, all the way to the International Space Station
Out of this world.
for a look at something that, well, you wouldn't think it's complicated,
Right.
but it's space coffee.
Yeah.
We've got a Reddit thread, and people are buzzing about it, astronauts, their coffee experiences, all of that. And we found a really interesting article
Cool.
about the technology they had to invent just so they could make a cup of coffee in space.
It really makes you realize just how much we take for granted. Like just having a cup of coffee here, super easy.
Right.
But up there, completely different story.
You're telling me it's like you're an astronaut surrounded by the most advanced technology ever, and then your morning coffee routine, that's a whole other mission. And speaking of which, our Reddit thread, someone mentioned how in the early days of space travel, they drank freeze-dried coffee
Oh, yeah.
from plastic bags.
I know.
Can you imagine?
No, thank you.
Talk about roughing it.
It makes you think, though, even if you had an amazing coffee bean,
Yeah,
you still need gravity.
that's true.
It's not as simple as just like, oh, we have the stuff, let's make it. Without gravity, just pouring hot water could be a total disaster.
See, I knew we were forgetting something. I did read about microgravity in the article, but
Let's-
honestly, I skimmed over that.
Sure.
What is microgravity exactly?
Okay, so
And how does it make coffee like a nightmare?
imagine you're on a roller coaster
Mhm.
and you go over the top of that hill,
Uh-huh.
that feeling of lightness. That's pretty close to microgravity.
Mm.
It's not that there's no gravity at all.
Okay.
It's just way weaker.
I see.
So like here on Earth, liquids, they flow down, right?
Yeah.
In microgravity, they do what they want. They clump together, make these big blobs. It's messy
You know what? I never even thought about that.
Yeah.
We really take it for granted,
for sure.
but that completely changes everything. Like, how do you even begin to have coffee? And can you imagine cleaning up a floating coffee blob in a space station? I bet that's not fun.
Yeah, not on the top of anyone's to-do list. I think early on, they just didn't. Like the coffee in a bag solution,
Right.
that was it.
Wow.
But when missions started to get longer,
Uh,
and people were up there for weeks, months,
sure.
they wanted a real cup. So that's when, like, the scientists and engineers, they got involved.
Okay.
And they came up with this, the espresso machine. It's this specially designed espresso maker just for the International Space Station.
The iEspresso. That's like straight out of a movie.
I know, right?
That's so cool.
It's crazy. And get this, it was designed by, wait for it, the Italian Space Agency.
Wow, that's a really good point.
Right.
Like when you think space exploration, you don't immediately jump to Italy, you know?
Right.
But it shows you need everyone to work together. These kinds of projects, international collaboration, it's everything.
Totally agree. And, it wasn't as easy as saying, okay, let's just make a smaller espresso machine.
I bet.
They had to factor in the microgravity, right?
Right.
Make sure the water heated up properly, didn't cause a huge mess.
Yeah,
Especially in the space station, that could be dangerous.
totally. Okay, so we've got this futuristic espresso machine, but how do you actually drink it? You can't just pour it into a regular mug.
Nope.
That's where that zero-G coffee cup comes in, right?
Exactly.
It looks like it's from Star Trek.
It does, doesn't it? It's incredible. They actually use zero gravity to help them design the cup.
Wait, so they didn't just work around it, they used it to their advantage?
Yep.
No way. That's amazing. How does that even work?
Okay, so it's all about fluid dynamics.
Okay.
They shape the cup a certain way,
Okay.
and it uses, I know this sounds complicated, but
Mm-hmm.
basically liquids, they like to stick together, and they also like to climb up narrow spaces.
Okay.
So they designed the cup to kind of guide the coffee using those principles.
So to be clear, we have the iEspresso,
Right.
and then you need the zero-G cup too. That seems like a lot of effort for a cup of coffee.
It does, but it's bigger than that. It shows what we can do.
Yeah.
As humans, when we encounter limitations, we find ways to break through them.
Mhm.
And this is in probably one of the most extreme environments imaginable.
It is pretty extreme. And speaking of extreme, the article mentioned Death Wish coffee.
Oh, yeah?
You know, that super strong coffee.
I've heard of it.
That's on the menu on the ISS.
Wow.
Apparently, some of the astronauts, they love it.
I bet.
They say it's what gets them going up there. It's funny, right? You think about space, you think about like rockets and planets and stuff, but just to drink coffee,
I know.
they had to solve that. That's wild.
It shows you, though, it's not just about going further out.
Yeah.
It's about figuring out how to actually live there.
Yeah, exactly. And just dealing with these problems, it makes you come up with completely new ideas. Like, who knew? Space coffee equals learning a ton about fluid dynamics. Speaking of which, that zero-G cup,
Yeah.
I bet that's got to be useful for other stuff,
Oh, absolutely.
even down here.
It's not just a space thing, actually. A lot of different fields are using that technology now. Like, you know how they have to design fuel tanks for spacecraft?
Yeah.
That's one. And even medical devices to deliver fluids in microgravity,
Interesting.
which that could be huge
Hmm.
for long missions, but even maybe for certain conditions here.
Wow, see? Never would have guessed that a coffee cup could lead to all that.
It's true.
It's like this chain reaction of new ideas from going to space.
And it brings together all these different areas of expertise.
That's true.
We were talking about the Italian Space Agency.
Right.
And then there was that comment about the Canadian robotic arm.
Oh, yeah. On the space shuttle.
Shows you, got to work
Yeah.
together internationally if you want to achieve these things.
Makes you realize it's a team effort
Yeah.
on a global scale. It's funny, someone on Reddit was like, wait, Italy's in on this too?
Yeah, I saw that.
And someone else like, well, they better handle the coffee, right?
Exactly. It's like everyone brings their A game,
That's a good point.
whether it's space or problems here. Combine all that. Amazing things happen.
So true. And you can see it even in the little things. Just wanting a good cup of coffee. It's this whole spirit of working together, solving problems. I mean, beyond the tech itself, I'm curious, what's it like for the astronauts
Right.
to finally have a decent cup after who knows how long?
It's a big deal.
I bet.
You read these astronaut diaries, they talk about it.
Really?
It's more than caffeine. It's like a little piece of home,
Oh.
especially when you're up there so long.
Yeah, makes sense.
One astronaut even said it's like a psychological victory.
Wow.
You're out there facing this huge challenge, but you can still have this little thing.
A psychological victory, that is a great way to put it. Makes you think, what other simple things completely change their meaning in space?
Right.
The stuff we don't even notice down here, like feeling the sun on your skin,
Totally.
or just going for a walk outside.
I bet when you're millions of miles away, those things hit differently.
You know what? This whole space coffee thing,
Right.
it wasn't really about the coffee.
What do you mean?
I mean, yes, everyone wants their caffeine fix, but it was about more than that. It was about how do we make things normal when you're in this totally crazy situation?
Yeah. And it's incredible what we can accomplish when we're pushed to those limits.
And how even something small, like a cup of coffee, it still connects us back to being human.
That's a really good point. Even when we're exploring the unknown, we still need those things that ground us.
Absolutely. Now, about that Death Wish coffee on the ISS.
Oh, yeah, the Reddit thread, people have thoughts on that.
They did?
Some astronauts, they swear by it. Strong coffee in space, it's perfect.
Right.
Others, not so much.
So even in space, people can't agree on coffee. I guess some things are universal. This got me thinking, though, all the everyday things, that would be so different up there. Can you imagine trying to brush your teeth in zero gravity or taking a shower?
Oh, man.
It'd be wild.
It makes you realize figuring out these everyday challenges in extreme situations,
Yeah.
that's where the really cool stuff happens. It's not just brushing your teeth. Imagine trying to sleep, no gravity to pull you down, or even like what happens when you cry. The tears, they wouldn't fall down your face.
Oh, wow.
They just kind of float there in these little blobs.
Okay, that's both really cool and also kind of creepy. It really makes you think about those kinds of things.
It really does. And it shows you the human body, it's adaptable. And as humans, we are incredibly good at coming up with solutions.
Yeah, we get an obstacle, we find a way around it. Whether it's brewing coffee in space or sleeping without gravity, there's always a way.
Exactly.
So we've reached the end of our deep dive here into space coffee. What's the one thing you hope people really take away from this?
You know, for me, it's realizing that exploring, going beyond what we know and being inventive, those two things go hand in hand. Every single challenge, every problem they solve up in space, it teaches us something, even something small. It could inspire new tech, which then that could change things down here too.
Like that ripple effect. It all starts with wanting to know more and then pushing the limits of what's possible. So next time you're enjoying your coffee, just take a second. Think about those astronauts up on the ISS, sipping their space brew. It took a lot of creativity to make that happen.
It did.
And it reminds us, even in the strangest places, a little ingenuity can go a long way.